Welcome to Chasing Justice. Please subscribe to our channel below, make sure that you make comments, and make sure that you share our videos. New and exciting news. We've created a new talk show. It's called Let's Talk. We'll be interviewing candidates that are running for public office to make sure that we bring you the most up-to-date and informed information. We also will be bringing you information updating on the research that we've been conducting regarding troopers and peace officer training in the state of Ohio. We ask that you share this video, but we also ask that you stay engaged. If you have comments, if you have complaints, if you have anything that we need to address, please make sure you let us know. So you're probably asking, how will you be able to do that? Well, it's going to be real simple. We've put together 2 websites, and we'll be launching those websites very soon to the public. One website is going to have a blog on it, and it's going to have your ability to join our organization for a very minimal amount every month to support the work that we're doing, so that we can hire more researchers, and we can hire more lawyers, and we can hire more people to do the work that we're doing. The other one will be for the legal community. The legal community will be able to obtain our records, will be able to obtain our expert reports, and also have access to our experts who will be able to testify in court cases. And so we'll be bringing all that really soon to you. I just want you to know that we are not anti-police. We are here to support the community and peace officers. We know that there's a lot going on within the law enforcement community, and we really feel like they need a voice, just like the public does. I used to be anti-cop. I used to be just like a lot of people. But then I started talking to police. I started listening to them. I started hearing their concerns. And I found that there's a whole different subject area that has not been addressed. Peace officers are concerned for their safety because they're not being properly trained. They know they're not being properly trained, and that there is a failure on the state of Ohio's part to ensure and make sure that they are obtaining the training that they need to be policing our communities. It is tragic when we hear of people like Tanisha Anderson, who had a mental health crisis, and we see Tamir Rice playing in a park, and we see all the other things that have been going on in terms of people losing their lives, and we see human rights and constitutional violations occurring all the time. There's always a video circulating on social media of malfeasance and misconduct. Well, we are concerned. We are definitely concerned, but we also, like I said, listen to police, and peace officers have helped us. Law enforcement has been very supportive of the work that we've been doing. Law enforcement wants the training, and you know what else law enforcement wants? They want to get rid of bad actors, and they have been forced to rehire people because of arbitration agreements that occur within police contracts. We've got to start making sure that that changes. But more importantly, we've got to start making sure that everybody is safe, that everyone who's engaging and functioning as a peace officer in the state of Ohio has received the training they're entitled to have. But we're also talking about making sure that when they receive training, that they're out there and they're policing our communities, that the people that they come in contact with are not going to be murdered. We want to make sure that everyone goes home at the end of the day. So we're not anti-police. So when we're talking about chasing justice, we're talking about chasing justice for everyone, because we cannot continue to function as we are. We have to be realistic about and address all of the issues. We could talk about defunding the police, but we have to talk about what that really looks like. So some peace officers have said, oh, I'm not going to go out there and I'm not going to do my job. And so then you shouldn't be a peace officer if you're not going to go out there and do your job. That's the first thing. The second thing is, when we're talking about defunding the police, we're talking about reallocating funding. At least Chasing Justice is. We're discussing reallocating funding so that peace officers actually get the training that they should have to police our communities. And so making sure that the training is occurring. The concern that we run into is that when we look through certified instructors training certificates, we're not finding certified instructors who are certified to teach domestic violence or de-escalation for mental health crises and other very important topics that they are mandated to take. And so what we found is that this is a recipe for disaster. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of people being killed in the state of Ohio that didn't have to be if the state of Ohio had actually made sure that they were properly trained. So a lot of you may or may not know that it's an affirmative defense for peace officers to be afraid, in fear of their life. You hear that an awful lot. And so people say, oh, well, he shouldn't be out there if he's in fear of his life. Well, first of all, he's human, so he's going to be in fear of his life at some level. But what we've also found is that if they are trained properly, they are less fearful to do their jobs. We're not finding that they are being trained properly. We aren't finding certificates which reflect they've been trained at all. And so there's been some argument about the online courses. And so we stipulated in court when we had our court case that we know that they took the training online, but we didn't think that 3 minutes was sufficient to meet an hour mandate. And so there are a lot of problems that are going on at the state level that we wanted to bring out, and that we wanted our state legislators, we wanted our Congress, our Senate, we wanted our governor, who actually has the authority, and so does the Attorney General, to fix these problems. It's just a real quick, legislation that can be done. We are currently in court with several cases where we are challenging the legal authority of certain persons that are functioning in law enforcement who have engaged in misconduct and engaged in killing unarmed American citizens. And so we're looking at the high profile cases. We're looking at those persons who have done these things and has really create a rift between the public and peace officers in public service. And so we're talking about making sure that they're held accountable. Well, what we've done is, and I have to give a big shout out to all the guys, Tariq Shabazz, who is currently running for congressional seat, and for Antoine Tolbert, who is running for city council seat, Ward 4. And so Don Bryant, who is an infamous advocate for everything, and Jeff Mixon, who is the head of Cuyahoga County Black Lives Matters, Dr. Richard Montgomery, and myself, we have filed affidavits with our Cuyahoga County prosecutor in cases where police have killed people. We are going to continue to file, and we're going to continue to put pressure on the prosecutor's office and to ask our judges to do their job, to enforce the law, to remove those persons who have no evidence of taking mandated training. And so this is something that we want to do for several reasons. One is because those persons who are not properly trained are not just a safety hazard to the public, but they are also a hazard to other peace officers. And we're seeing a lot of things that are going on in the community. So we want to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, everyone goes home safely. We want to make sure that when a peace officer goes out there to do his job or her job, that she's not submitted and subjected to situations they are not equipped to handle. It's not fair to them. We believe in defunding the police, but not the way and the drastic measures that we've heard. That's not what we believe. What we believe is that there should be peace officers who are specifically trained in specialized areas. We believe that those officers should be dispatched with social workers or domestic violence workers to situations to ensure that there is safety of the social worker, the family, and the officer. But they've got to be able to know what it means to deal with people who are having a mental health crisis or someone who is in a domestic violence situation. We want to make sure that everybody goes home safely. We want to make sure that everyone obtains the mental health services or the physical health services that are necessary when those type of issues arise. We believe that 911 should be expanded to have those services so that when someone calls and says, my loved one is having a mental health crisis, that the proper people who are trained in that area are dispatched with a peace officer who is also trained in that area. And so we look at defunding and reforming policing in a very different way, not so drastically as it's being said out there, and getting rid of police altogether. I used to be anti-police. I did. For a very long time, I was anti-police, and I felt like we should dismantle the whole system, send them home. They shouldn't have a job. There has to be a better way of policing our communities than what we've been getting. And so after 3-4 years, going into 4 years of talking to chiefs of police, talking to peace officers, actually having sit-downs and listening to their concerns, I got a whole different view of policing. Do you know that many police departments in our state, in the state of Ohio, don't even have fax machines? They don't have machines to scan information. They have no way to hold records. They are, very, very, they're not equipped. They're not equipped, and they're not up to date with technology. And I kind of lost my thought there, so forgive me for that. But I wanted you guys to know that there are serious things going on. I've talked to chiefs, and chiefs say, we try to get rid of these guys, and arbitrators give them their jobs back. Well, that comes back to our elected officials who go into these collective bargaining agreements. And so there are certain things that cannot be done to someone who becomes a peace officer. And I think that when we're looking at the qualified immunity issue, that we need to start talking about our collective bargaining issues as well. That we should not be giving them an arbitration clause. That, like, if you work at McDonald's and Burger King, you get fired when you don't do your job or you create some type of damage. Currently, under Ohio law, if a peace officer does not take specific mandated training in a specific manner and has the hours, the mandated hours, he is to cease functioning in law enforcement, and he is to cease and is prohibited from carrying a firearm. And so what we found is that there are a lot of people out there who have not taken their mandated hours, who have taken 3 minutes of online courses and nothing else. And so they are prohibited. So under Ohio law, the way our law is written, Ohio Revised Code and Ohio Administrative Codes that govern peace officers and troopers training, they've linked it to the legal mandates. So basically, if the legal authority is you cannot be a doctor, you cannot be a social worker, you cannot be a teacher or a daycare worker if you are not up to date with your current specific training. So it's the same thing for peace officers. But the problem is no one's tracking it. So Chasing Justice has obtained over 30,000 peace officers' files, and we're tracking that training. So we're making sure that when we provide reports to the public and to law enforcement or to legal firms, we're giving them accurate, up-to-date reports that are in chime with the legislation. So let's put it like this. If a peace officer is supposed to have 1 hour of domestic violence in 2011, and that person has no record of taking that domestic violence class in 2011, he stopped being a peace officer on January 1st of 2012. And so we don't really kind of go into what happens after he missed that class, because under Ohio law, he was required to cease functioning as a peace officer. We took the historical mandates and we lined them up with the certificates. We checked them off. Does he have 6 hours of trauma-informed policing? Does he have his mandated hours for de-escalation and mental health crisis? And so when we don't find the mandated hours, because that's what we're looking at. We're not just looking at certificates, okay? We've got a lot of certificates that have actually no hours on them, and they are not being taught by instructors, which are being attested to when they're submitting their reports to the state of Ohio. So in essence, what I want everyone to do is continue to support Chasing Justice so that we can keep bringing this information. We're also helping people file affidavits in our courts and lawsuits. We're referring people to attorneys. And so attorneys are now filing lawsuits where there are peace officers and troopers who are not up to date on their mandated training. So I want you guys to know that this is not a campaign against law enforcement, but actually a campaign to get the proper training for law enforcement. It is to help law enforcement so that they're not afraid to do their jobs, but also to reallocate funding to people and to agencies who can handle certain crises that are often being called in through 911. And so we believe in police officers. We believe that, I know a lot of good police officers, family, friends, and it concerns me that they went out there and they did not have their training. And so I want you guys to know that this is not an anti-police campaign. It is an accountability campaign. It is a human rights campaign. It is a constitutional right campaign. And guess what? Police have constitutional rights too. And those rights are not being protected when you have agencies that are not providing them with the training, the specific mandated training that they need to do the jobs. We want to make sure that peace officers are taken care of, just like we want the public to be taken care of. We want to see less tragedies. We want to see more people go home. And if they have to be arrested, that they're able to go to court and they're able to, go through the system and make sure that their constitutional rights have been protected. So I want to say to you that we have judges sitting on our benches who don't want to hold police accountable. So it is our opinion at Chasing Justice that those judges must be held accountable for not upholding the law. The law is specific. If a person has not completed their mandated training, they are prohibited and they are to cease functioning as law enforcement. They are to cease functioning carrying a firearm. Also, if peace officers have not taken their annual gun requalifications, they are to cease carrying a firearm. It is tragic when we obtained the records of James Griffith, who just recently killed Arthur Keith in the CMHA shooting a couple months ago. We found that James Griffith has no record of mandated training. We've asked for the records. There are no records. We've also asked for the annual firearm. And it's also a shame that this officer, who's been there for quite some time, has failed multiple times his annual gun requalifications. And so it's a concern to us, because if no one is watching, no one is looking, no one is taking the time to see if people are actually taking their training, then they're going to continue to do what they're doing. The state has nothing in place to track training. They have nothing in place to enforce that they take the training. There's nothing there. They don't audit the departments. We audited departments, and we didn't just audit departments, so that you get a good idea of what Chasing Justice has done. We would get the records from the state of Ohio to show where, Officer Friendly held appointments. So he might have held appointments at 5 or 6 different agencies. And so we went to all the agencies and we obtained the continued professional training rosters that were submitted to the state. We also obtained the records of training, if there were records of training, for every department. And like I said, we took the historical mandates and we just lined them up. And we said, does Officer Friendly have his 2007 mandated training? We found no, he did not. From the onset of the legislation, they did not train our peace officers. And so we have a lot of peace officers that are out there that have not, under Ohio law, been peace officers since 2008. And so it's a concern because they may not even know that they weren't peace officers. Why do I say that? I say that because many peace officers depend on their chiefs of police to make sure that they know what training they're supposed to have and provide that training. Now, recently, and I think it was this morning, I read an article on Cleveland.com, which was discussing, the police training for Matthew Rhodes. And so Matthew Rhodes and Louis Catalani killed Luke Stewart, who was sleeping in his car. They engaged him without probable cause, without reason, and for some reason, the courts allowed them to walk away from what they did to Luke Stewart. Why was this so tragic? It's tragic because Matthew Rhodes and Louis Catalani have absolutely no training. They have no training. There's no record of training. And when Matthew Rhodes served in Maple Heights, they reported to the state he did not take the training. And so Dr. Richard Montgomery and I, we filed the proper affidavits in the City of Euclid Municipal Court with Judge Patrick Gallagher. So Judge Patrick Gallagher sent it to a special prosecutor by the name of Peter Sackett, who, by the way, is not a prosecutor. He is an attorney. And he used the same rosters that we used to show that Matthew Rhodes had not taken his training and under Ohio law was not a peace officer. He used the exact same CPT rosters, the continuing professional training rosters, to say he was compliant. So you have what is called mispresumption of felony by the judge and by the attorney who have entered into a conspiracy to cover up the fact that when Luke Stewart was murdered by Matthew Rhodes and Louis Catalani, that he was not a peace officer under Ohio law. So how are we going to handle that? We're going to handle judges by sending them up to the Department of Justice for review, because we are now holding our prosecutors and our judges responsible. So Judge Patrick Gallagher is going to receive an affidavit. We are going to send an affidavit. Under Ohio law, we can do that. We're going to submit those affidavits with all the information for Judge Patrick Gallagher and for Attorney Peter Sackett, who has covered up the illegal status of Matthew Rhodes, who still serves in the Euclid Police Department. Here's what else is also interesting. Matthew Rhodes was reported by the city of Euclid along with the entire department as not having their mandated training. So the current trainer, his name is Mitch Hauser. Mitch Hauser thinks that because they didn't ask for reimbursement training in 2017, they weren't required to take the mandates, which is not true. It's not accurate. So, not every police department is able to get reimbursement funding. So, agencies like universities, Circle Police Department, they're not eligible to get reimbursement because they're not a public agency. They are nonprofit. So hospitals, they don't get reimbursement funding. And some other agencies that are private agencies but still recognize law enforcement are mandated to take the training requirements. And what we found is, just like the rest of them in University Circle, their officers don't have the mandated training either. Why is this interesting? Because James Rapicki used to be the chief of police in Euclid, and he did not require his officers to take training like now he has not required them to take training. So you have a lot of people who are being arrested. Their constitutional rights have been violated, and the state of Ohio has no authority to remove peace officers. So our state legislators need to get on the ball and start writing some legislation where they are able to give the juice, the power to the Ohio Peace Officer Commission to not only decertify and remove, but to send for prosecution peace officers who are not compliant with their training and have continued to function in law enforcement. So Matthew Rhodes killed Luke Stewart. Judge Patrick Gallagher and attorney Peter Sackett conspired to cover it up in spite of the evidence that we provided to the court showing that he had not taken the training and that there is no record of him taking the training. He was mandated to take training, and he was reported by the previous agencies he had not taken the training. But the judge decided he was going to dismiss the case with prejudice and make it not appealable. That's okay, Judge Patrick Gallagher, because we're going to send you up to the Department of Justice for investigation for conspiring to cover up, under the color of law no less, depriving Luke Stewart of his constitutional rights. It is a shame when we have judges that are sitting on the bench who are willing to protect the corrupt peace officers and not the people who elected them to office, whose tax dollars are paying their salaries. They forget they work for us. And I think it's time that not only Chasing Justice, but other organizations start holding judges accountable. Judge Richard McMonagle, who is the judge on the case that we filed, special docket cases in the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. We've been fighting it for 3 years. He decided to hold not 1, but 9 in-person hearings on the case in spite of administrative orders requiring that all civil cases be held remotely. And that means via Zoom or teleconference. he has insisted on holding in-person conferences, and then he would cancel those conferences on the docket, stating for COVID-19 reasons. So Judge Richard McMonagle, who has known, we did file an injunction. He has known since January of last year that Larry McDonald, who is in the East Cleveland Police Department, has not had his training, along with 25 other people. We filed an injunction. Judge Richard McMonagle refused to enforce the injunction, to grant the injunction, to remove certain peace officers under Ohio law who are prohibited from functioning. He refused to do it. On January 5th of 2021, Larry McDonald pursued young Vincent Belmonte and shot him in the back of the head when he was fleeing. Guess what? Larry McDonald is not a police officer. He is not a peace officer under Ohio law. He has no record of training since 2007, and he's not a peace officer. But we have a judge who didn't think it was important to remove him. So what Judge Richard McMonagle did, he held another in-person hearing in spite of the most recent administrative orders, and I believe it was January 19th of 2021, consistent with the other 9 administrative orders, which stated that all civil cases were to be held remotely. I even filed a motion for all cases to be held remotely. Excuse me, I should have turned my phone off. All right, so I had filed a motion to have all of the hearings to be held remotely because I have a compromised immune system, and so I'm not comfortable. But also the administrative orders, January 19th, were submitted once again that anything that, if it's not a criminal case, it cannot be held in person. And so again, Richard McMonagle decided to schedule a February 1st or February 2nd hearing in person, and I did not respond to it. I was not going to go. The administrative orders prohibited him from doing it. He sent an email stating that, he was going to move this to the 9th. But what he did not do was, he did not record the 9th on the docket. He did not have the clerk of courts properly recorded. He did not have everyone notified of him changing it to February 9th. Under Ohio law and civil rules, I'm not required to come to a court hearing that is not recorded on the docket, and I'm also not required when I'm not notified of that hearing, especially properly. So again, Judge Richard McMonagle decided he was going to hold this hearing, and certain persons showed up. I'm not sure who was there exactly, but I am sure opposing counsel Heather McCullough did show up. And so he decided on February 9th he was going to dismiss our cases, not on the merits of the cases, but because we didn't show up. He dismissed the cases for with prejudice for us not coming to court. And so this is a hearing that is not recorded on the record, and it is the 3rd time that Judge McMonagle has tried to do this. We are looking at someone who has blatantly disregarded administrative orders, state orders regarding in-person hearings. We are looking at someone who used it as an opportunity under the color of law to dismiss cases and not to hold the East Cleveland Police Department and the mayor accountable for not taking the mandated training. And so what we've witnessed since January 1st is a rise in police chases, which have ended in destruction. They have killed people in these chases. They have come into the city of Cleveland and injured unsuspecting drivers in their chases. I don't know if Judge Richard McMonagle is proud of his work, but he should be. You should be absolutely ecstatic that you did not hold the East Cleveland Police Department accountable and you did not enforce the law. Look at your handiwork. So with that being said, there was a lawsuit filed in the United States District Court, which included Judge Richard McMonagle for his under the color of law decision to dismiss a case that was not recorded on the docket, thereby violating the constitutional rights of myself and the other individual that filed those affidavits, pushing for the prosecution, the arrest and prosecution of certain persons functioning as peace officers. So we are not going to stop fighting this fight. We're going to keep fighting this fight because we love you and we want to support you, the community, but we also want to make sure that peace officers are also protected. So the question was posed to me, what if Vincent had killed Larry? Would you still be as boisterous? And my answer is yes. I would still hold Judge Richard McMonagle responsible for the death of Larry McDonald, just like I hold him responsible for the death of Vincent Belmonte. You failed to uphold the law. It is not acceptable. It is not acceptable that a 19-year-old child is dead. And because you didn't care enough to uphold the law and you wanted to protect Larry McDonald and not a 19-year-old who came into contact, whose human rights and constitutional rights were violated. So I hope you're proud of yourself, Judge McMonagle, and I hope you're proud of yourself, Judge Patrick Gallagher, because we're going to remember you, Judge Patrick Gallagher, the next time you run for any office. We are going to make sure the public knows that you are not willing to uphold the law unless it's against us, and that you're not willing to uphold the law and protect the public safety. And what makes it even worse, Judge Patrick Gallagher, is the fact that you don't even care about the lives of the men and women that serve in the Euclid Police Department. You sent them a message, just like Judge McMonagle, saying that you don't care if they live or die out there. And I think that that is disgraceful. I think you should be held accountable. And I think that you need to understand that the public is no longer willing to accept our judiciates ignoring the deaths, the murders of citizens, particularly those who are unarmed and of African American descent in the state of Ohio. Listen, guys, I love you all. As you know, I love doing what I do, and I'm vigilant, and I want everyone to know that I am dedicated into changing what's going on in our state when it comes to policing. I can't do that without you. So remember, we'll be launching the website very soon. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share this video, talk about this video, and put your comments down there. We need to hear from you. Listen, guys, it's Sunday, and I'm going to go out in the sun. Have a good day, everybody.